When we hear the phrase, once a cheater, always a cheater, it's often spoken with this sharp finality, like it's a law of nature, like someone who cheats is stamped for life, incapable of anything else. And I get it. That phrase offers a kind of protection. If we believe it, we never have to take the risk again. We can put a neat little label on the pain, tuck it away, and move forward without the messiness of nuance. But here's the truth. Cheating is rarely just about cheating. It's not just about the act. It's about the why behind it. When someone cheats, it's tempting to reduce the situation to a black and white moral failure. They're bad, I'm good. That's all I need to know. That human behavior, especially in relationships, is so much more layered than that. Cheating is a symptom. It's the red flag waving in front of a much deeper issue. That, more often than not, has been brewing long before the betrayal ever took place. Sometimes people cheat because they feel unseen or unheard in their relationship. Now, that's not an excuse. It's never an excuse. But it does help us understand what's going on beneath the surface. Maybe they've lost their sense of self. Maybe they're insecure and trying to feel powerful again. Maybe they have no idea how to express their needs in a healthy way, so they go looking elsewhere for a shortcut to validation. That doesn't justify the behavior. It just means there's a root issue that needs addressing. And here's where it gets interesting. If we treat cheating like the whole story, we miss the chance to actually grow from the experience, both as individuals and as partners. We miss the opportunity to ask better questions. Instead of, will they do it again? Ask, why did it happen in the first place? Because unless we understand why, we can't ever make an informed decision about whether trust can be rebuilt, or if we even want it to be. People cheat for different reasons. And yes, some of them will do it again. Some people cheat because they lack empathy. They don't value commitment. They're not in it for the right reasons. And if that's who you're dealing with, you'll see a pattern. You'll hear excuses. You'll see them deflect, blame others, or try to shift responsibility to you. And that's when you have to listen to the pattern more than the apology. But others, some people cheat and it breaks them. It shakes them awake. They see the consequences of what they've done. They feel the loss of your trust and it rattles something deep inside them. Those are the people who don't just say, sorry, they change. They dig deep. They ask the hard questions about their own values, their own wounds, their own blind spots. And more importantly, they commit to doing the work. See, the difference isn't in the mistake. It's in the response to the mistake. That's where the truth lives. Not in whether they cheated, but in how they own it after. Some people will say anything to get you back, just so they can slip into old habits the moment your guard is down. Others will show you through consistent, humble, sustained effort that they understand the gravity of what they did and that they're willing to grow from it. But none of this matters unless you are willing to step out of the pain just long enough to look at the bigger picture, not to excuse them, not to diminish what you feel, but to reclaim your power in the situation. Because when you start to see cheating not just as betrayal, but as information about the relationship, about the other person, even about yourself, you gain clarity. You take your heart out of the fog and start asking the right questions. What needs weren't being met? What patterns were we stuck in? Where did the disconnection begin? And is this something we can rebuild or not? And let's be honest, sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes you realize this person isn't willing or capable of going deeper. Sometimes the cheating is just one item in a long list of behaviors that don't serve you. And if that's the case, you walk, not because they cheated, but because they showed you they're not who you need. But other times, something real happens in the aftermath. The relationship gets stripped down to its foundation. There's no more pretending. There's no more sugarcoating. Just raw truth. And from there, some couples rebuild, not just to get back to where they were, but to go somewhere better, somewhere more honest, more vulnerable, more connected. It's never just about the betrayal. It's about what the betrayal reveals, about the relationship, about the person, about you. So when someone cheats, yes, feel the pain, feel the betrayal, but don't stop there. Go deeper. Look at the symptoms. Get curious. Be bold enough to ask the hard questions, because that's where real healing begins. And that's how you take control of your story again. You don't need to decide right now if you'll forgive them. You don't need to know for sure if they'll cheat again. But you do need to understand what the cheating meant, what it exposed, and what it taught you. That clarity, that's what will guide your next move. Not fear, not bitterness, and definitely not a one-size-fits-all phrase like once a cheater, always a cheater. The truth is always deeper than that. People can change. That's the truth. But here's what most people don't want to hear. Change is not guaranteed just because someone says they want to. Change takes self-awarenesses, it takes humility, and above all, it takes consistent, often uncomfortable action over time. It's not about whether someone can change, it's about whether they will and whether they even see the need to in the first place. Now, when it comes to cheating, this is where things get especially tricky because we're dealing with betrayal, with broken trust, and that stings. So naturally, we want answers. We want to know if they cheated once, does that mean they'll always cheat? Are we looking at a one-time lapse in judgment or a pattern of behavior? Here's where I want to slow this down. When someone cheats, a lot of people jump straight to labels. He's a cheater. She's a cheater. That's just who they are. And sure, maybe in some cases, that's true. Some people are repeat offenders. They bounce from relationship to relationship, seeking novelty, avoiding intimacy, and crossing boundaries like it's no big deal. That's not someone who made a mistake. That's someone who lives by that mistake. But, and this is important, not everyone who cheats is doomed to repeat it. And that's where we have to do the hard work of distinguishing between a person's capacity to change and their track record of change. Has this person shown a genuine understanding of what they did and why it was wrong? Have they expressed real remorse, not just for the consequences, but for the actual act of betrayal? Are they taking responsibility, or are they spinning others or trying to justify their actions? Because you'll know if someone is growing or if they're just managing your perception of them. You'll feel the difference between someone who is trying to rebuild trust from the ground up and someone who's hoping you'll just forget it happened. People who are truly remorseful don't get defensive when you bring up your pain. They listen. They ask how they can show up better. They give you time. They understand that rebuilding trust isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. And if they're not willing to run that marathon with you, that's your answer right there. So yes, people can change, but patterns don't lie. If this isn't the first time they've betrayed someone, if they have a history of running when things get real, or if they keep doing the same things and expecting different results, believe the pattern, not the promise. You don't need to play detective. You don't need to gather a mountain of evidence. Just watch. Watch how they respond to your boundaries. Watch how they handle your doubts. Watch how they act when the spotlight isn't on them. Because change doesn't announce itself, it reveals itself. And here's something else that's crucial to understand. Change has to be internal. You can't make someone change by loving them harder. You can't make someone faithful by being more forgiving, more patient, more understanding. That's not your job, and it never was. You're not the rehab center for someone's emotional immaturity. If they want to grow, they'll do it on their own, whether you stay or not. That's what makes it so hard, isn't it? Because sometimes we want to believe someone is changing. We see their good side. We remember the laughter, the connection, the potential. And so we hold on to that. We hope that if we give it just a little more time, a little more grace, they'll get there. But don't confuse hope with evidence. Don't confuse your desire for change with their willingness to do the work. When someone cheats and says, "I'll never do it again," what are they backing that up with? Are they going to therapy? Are they facing the parts of themselves that led to this? Are they working on their communication, their impulse control, their value, or are they just waiting for things to go back to normal? You deserve more than empty apologies. You deserve more than temporary behavior that fades once the tension dies down. You deserve someone whose actions match their words, consistently, over time, not just when they're afraid of losing you. Look, people are complex. We all have parts of us we're not proud of. We've all messed up in some way. But when someone hurts you, especially through betrayal, the most important question isn't just, can they change? It's, are they showing up differently every day? Because if you're going to give someone a second chance, it better not be based on who you hope they'll become. It has to be based on who they are showing you they are right now. At the end of the day, this isn't about judging people for their past. It's about protecting your peace in the present. People can absolutely rise above their mistakes. They can become better, wiser, more honest versions of themselves. But that process is messy. It's uncomfortable, and it requires more than just words. It requires a consistent pattern of integrity. If someone cheated once and they're doing the deep, difficult work to become trustworthy again, that's worth noticing. But if they're brushing it under the rug, making excuses, or acting like they're entitled to your forgiveness, then no, you don't owe them anything. You don't have to gamble your heart on someone's potential. Wait for proof. Wait for consistency. Because real change isn't loud. It's quiet. It's disciplined. And it leaves no room for doubt. Someone's past matters. Of course it does. You'd be crazy to pretend it doesn't. If someone has cheated in the past, it raises a red flag. And that flag isn't something you should just ignore. But here's the thing. Don't be blinded by it either. There's this idea that if someone's cheated once, they'll always do it again, like it's baked into their DNA. And that mindset, while protective, can also be incredibly limiting. We want a rule that keeps us safe, a line that tells us yes or no, go or stay. But relationships and people are messier than that, more nuanced, more human. Let's say someone walks into your life and they admit to cheating in a past relationship. They're honest about it. They don't glorify it. They don't make excuses. They say, it was the worst mistake I ever made, and I hated who I was when I did it. Now, contrast that with someone else who also cheated, but brushes it off. It just happened. We were fighting a lot. It wasn't a big deal. Everyone messes up. That second response, that's a walking alarm bell. It's not the act alone that defines who someone is. It's their level of ownership, the honesty with which they speak about it, the work they've done since, and the behavior they've consistently shown over time. And yes, I said consistently. That's the key word here. Because anyone can say they changed. Anyone can cry tears of regret. Anyone can write a heartfelt message or give a beautifully rehearsed apology. But change is proven in repetition, in patterns, in behavior when nobody's watching. If you're going to trust someone who has a past, you need to be a detective of consistency. You need to pay attention to how they talk about their past, how they speak about their exes, how they handle conflict now. Do they deflect blame or do they take accountability? Do they hide things that make them uncomfortable or do they open up even when it's hard? Because someone who's changed doesn't just change how they act, they change how they live. It's also important to watch what they value now. Are they driven by connection, honesty, and growth? Or are they still chasing novelty, attention, and validation? A person who once cheated and now deeply values emotional security will show you that in how they treat your heart. They'll be present, they'll be transparent, they'll be proactive about making you feel safe. But someone who still values the ego hit, the attention, the thrill of being desired by someone new, they're just looking for another opportunity to slip. And no amount of romantic chemistry or sweet words can replace emotional maturity. We've all done things we're not proud of. Maybe not infidelity, but we've all acted from a place we've since outgrown. And if we're going to allow ourselves to evolve, we have to extend that possibility to others too. The key is to distinguish between those who are truly different now and those who are just better at hiding the same behavior. Let me say something else. It's tempting to use someone's past like a shield for ourselves. They cheated before, so I won't let myself love them. I won't let myself trust them. I won't give them a chance. And if that's your boundary, fine. You're allowed to have that standard. You never owe anyone your trust. But ask yourself, is this a boundary or is it fear in disguise? Are you protecting yourself or punishing someone for a past they've already outgrown? Because while people absolutely do repeat patterns, especially when they haven't done the work, some people fight like hell to become better. They confront their mistakes. They get therapy. They read the books. They talk to mentors. They sit in the discomfort of their actions, and they become people who would never go back there. And if you've got someone like that in front of you, don't be so quick to lump them in with a version of themselves they no longer are. Here's the truth that makes this all so complicated. Someone can be better, truly better, and still not be right for you. Growth doesn't guarantee compatibility, but it does deserve consideration. And when someone has changed, not just in words, but in how they show up, it's worth looking past the label of cheater and seeing the human underneath. That said, you've also got to be honest about what your heart can handle. If the trust just isn't there, if the past sits in your chest like a stone, if every moment of intimacy is clouded by suspicion, you're not in a relationship. You're in a war zone, and no one thrives there. Not them, not you. So no, not every person who cheats is doomed to repeat it. But not every person who says they've changed has actually earned your trust back. You've got to be wise. You've got to be discerning. And most of all, you've got to believe what people show you, not just what they tell you. The past matters, but it's the present that should shape your decisions. Watch how they love you now. Watch how they communicate. Watch how they behave when things aren't easy. Watch for humility. Watch for empathy. Watch for emotional responsibility. These are the signs that you're not dealing with the same person they used to be. And if all of that's missing, then maybe the past isn't really past at all. Maybe it's just waiting to happen again. Forgiveness isn't weak. In fact, when it's done right, it's one of the strongest things you can ever do in a relationship. But here's the mistake people often make. They treat forgiveness like a reset button. They think saying, I forgive you, is the end of the process, when actually it's just the beginning of a very deliberate, conscious decision about the future. Now, let's get this straight. Choosing to forgive someone who's cheated on you doesn't mean you're letting them off the hook. It doesn't mean you're pretending it didn't hurt or that it didn't shake the foundation of trust. Forgiveness isn't about denying your feelings. It's about choosing to no longer be held hostage by them. But, and this is a massive but, forgiveness without change is just permission. When someone breaks your trust, especially in something as intimate and sacred as a romantic relationship, they have to earn their place again. That means more than just saying, I'm sorry. Apologies are easy. Words are cheap. What matters is the follow-through. What matters is whether they've reflected on the impact of their actions, whether they've done the inner work to understand why they betrayed your trust in the first place. And more importantly, whether they've changed how they move in a relationship, how they communicate, how they show up, how they respect boundaries. You see, real remorse doesn't come with a sales pitch. It doesn't come with pressure for you to hurry up and forgive. Real remorse is patient. It says, I understand if you need time. I'll be here doing the work, regardless of whether you choose to stay or go. That's what you need to see before forgiveness even becomes part of the conversation. And here's something most people overlook. Forgiveness is not something you give to someone else. It's something you give to yourself. Because holding on to resentment, staying angry, staying bitter, it doesn't change the past. It just keeps you anchored to it. And when you're anchored to that pain, you can't move forward, not with them and not on your own. Forgiveness is a way of setting yourself free. But again, that freedom should not cost you your standards. A lot of people confuse forgiveness with staying. That you can forgive someone and still walk away. In fact, sometimes that's the healthiest option. Forgiving doesn't mean you continue the relationship. It means you've made peace with what happened, but you've also decided what you will and will not accept moving forward. It's possible to let go of anger and still protect your future. And this is where your intuition kicks in. When you're with someone who cheated, your gut knows whether they're genuinely trying to change or whether they're just trying to get out of the doghouse. You can feel it. One version makes you feel respected, safe, and heard. The other makes you feel like you're being manipulated into giving them another chance, so they can go back to being comfortable. Your gut doesn't lie. You just have to stop overriding it with hope. The other trap we fall into is this idea that forgiving quickly makes us stronger or more evolved. But true strength lies in slowing down, in taking the time to understand what you need to heal. Don't rush to restore what was broken just because you missed the comfort of the connection. Missing someone doesn't mean you should go back. It means you're human. It means there was something real. But don't confuse the memory of the good times with a reason to ignore the damage done. Also, let's not forget, sometimes the person who cheated wants forgiveness as a way to avoid guilt. They want you to say, it's okay, so they can stop feeling like the bad guy. That's not your job. It's not your job to manage their shame. It's not your job to fix the emotional mess they created just so they can feel better about themselves. Forgiveness has to come from a place of clarity, not pressure. From peace, not panic. What you should be asking yourself isn't, should I forgive them, but what version of this relationship do I want going forward? Do I feel emotionally safe here? Do I see enough change to believe that the betrayal won't happen again? Am I able to rebuild trust in a way that doesn't sacrifice my mental and emotional well-being? Because what happens after forgiveness is just as important as forgiveness itself. You can't go back to the same relationship. You have to build something new together, something stronger, more honest, more aligned. The old foundation has cracks now. If you're going to stay, you need to pour new concrete. That takes effort. It takes time. And it takes two people fully invested in doing the work. The truth is, some people cheat and never grow from it. They cheat again and again, not because they're evil, but because they refuse to face themselves. They don't want to do the work. They want the thrill, the escape, the validation, but not the responsibility. That's why your forgiveness can't be based on potential. It has to be based on proof. Forgiveness is powerful, but only when it's anchored in your self-respect. Only when you know your worth and make decisions from a place of love for yourself. You can be kind, you can be understanding, you can even have empathy for the person who hurt you, but don't ever mistake empathy for obligation. At the end of the day, forgiveness isn't about giving them a second chance. It's about giving yourself a first chance at peace. There's one thing I've learned from working with people all around the world on their relationships. It's this: your standards teach people how to treat you. Every single day, in the smallest of ways, you're setting the tone for how others will engage with you. It's not about grand gestures. It's about what you allow, what you tolerate, and what you reinforce. Let's talk about that in the context of cheating. Because when someone has betrayed your trust, the temptation is to focus all your energy on them. Why did they do it? Will they do it again? Can I trust them? But the more important and more empowering question is, what am I showing this person through my response? When you stay with someone after they've cheated, you're sending a message, whether you realize it or not. Now, that doesn't mean you're telling them cheating is okay. But if there are no real consequences, if you stay without boundaries, without accountability, without demanding growth, you're creating a dynamic where your pain becomes negotiable. That's not love. That's self-betrayal. I'm not saying it's wrong to give someone a second chance. In fact, some people do come back from infidelity stronger, more honest, more connected. But that only happens when the person who broke the trust understands that your forgiveness isn't automatic. It's earned. And the moment you act like your forgiveness is a given, you lose the leverage that makes real change possible. It's not about playing games. It's about maintaining self-respect. You see, people don't just respond to what you say. They respond to what you tolerate. You can say, I won't put up with that all day long. But if your actions say otherwise, if you stay silent, make excuses for them, sweep things under the rug, then your words lose their power. And over time, so do you. This is especially important when we're in love, because love has a funny way of making us forget our worth. We think that if we just love harder, if we give more, if we prove how much we care, that person will suddenly realize we're irreplaceable. But love doesn't fix broken character, and your value isn't proven through how much you're willing to suffer. I know it hurts. I know it's hard to walk away from someone you love, especially when you built so much together. But staying with someone who repeatedly violates your trust isn't strength, it's fear. It's fear of being alone, fear of starting over, fear of not finding someone better. But here's what I want you to hear. You are not hard to love. You are not asking for too much. You're asking the wrong person to give you what they're unwilling or incapable of giving. And if you keep making excuses for their behavior, what you're really doing is lowering your standards one heartbreak at a time. You chip away at your expectations to keep the peace, to avoid confrontation, to hold on to something that looks like love but doesn't feel like safety. And eventually, you wake up one day wondering why you don't recognize yourself anymore. People will always test boundaries, not because they're evil or malicious, but because that's human nature. We push to see what we can get away with. That's why your standards matter. They act like guardrails, not to punish people, but to guide them. When someone knows that betrayal equals distance, that dishonesty equals disconnection, they learn that your love isn't free. It's valuable, and it requires effort to maintain. When someone cheats on you and sees that you're still there, still loving them, still making excuses to your friends and family, what incentive do they have to change? But when someone cheats and sees that they've lost access to you, emotionally, physically, mentally, that's when the real reflection begins. That's when they realize they've messed up. That's when growth has a chance. The irony is, when you raise your standards, it doesn't push the right person away. It makes you human. It means you love deeply and you hope for the best. But don't confuse staying power with self-love. The question isn't just, do I love this person? The real question is, am I loving myself while I'm loving this person? Because if you're constantly in a cycle of anxiety, insecurity, and fear, if your relationship feels like a game of emotional survival, then you're not in a partnership, you're in a power struggle. And no amount of chemistry or history justifies a relationship that robs you of your peace. So take a moment to ask yourself, what am I teaching the people in my life through my silence, my forgiveness, my decisions? Am I showing them that my love has no boundaries? Or am I showing them that loving me comes with a responsibility to honor me, to respect me, to protect what we have? You get to decide what kind of love you accept. You get to decide how someone earns a place in your life. And the moment you stop settling is the moment you start attracting the kind of love that doesn't make you question your worth. Because your peace is the price no one should be able to bargain with. We often get so caught up in the question, will they cheat again, that we forget to ask the more important one, am I actually happy here? Think about that. Because when you've been hurt, when someone's broken your trust, your mind naturally wants to protect you from it happening again. It clings to fear. You start scanning for signs, overanalyzing their behavior, trying to calculate the odds of whether they'll do it again. But in doing that, you lose sight of how you feel in the present. It becomes all about them, what they're doing, how they're acting, whether they're changing, whether they're being honest this time. And while those things matter, they're only one side of the equation. The other side is you, your peace, your emotional safety, your self-respect. Because at the end of the day, even if they never cheat again, you still have to ask, can you be at peace in this relationship? Can you sleep at night knowing you're truly being valued, not just tolerated? It's not enough for someone to simply not hurt you again. That's a pretty low bar, isn't it? He hasn't cheated in 6 months. Isn't a relationship goal. That's just damage control. Sometimes we hold on to people not because they make us happy, but because we're scared of the pain of starting over. And so we wait, we hope, we say things like, they've changed, or they're trying, and maybe they are. But what's the experience of being with them now? Do you feel safe? Do you feel seen? Or are you just holding your breath, hoping they don't mess up again? Here's the thing. Trust isn't just about whether someone is faithful. Trust is about whether they care about how you feel whether they prioritize your emotional well-being even when it's inconvenient, whether they own their mistakes without excuses, whether they make you a priority, not just when it's easy, but when it's hard. And you deserve a relationship where you're not constantly second-guessing yourself or them, where you're not stuck in a cycle of anxiety, waiting for the other shoe to drop. That's not love. That's survival mode. And you weren't made to survive your relationship. You were made to thrive in it. But here's where it gets tricky. Some people do change. They wake up. They take responsibility. They do the hard work, therapy, accountability, reflection. They become better. And that's beautiful. But just because someone changes doesn't automatically mean the relationship is still the right fit. Growth is great, but sometimes what was broken can't be rebuilt. Sometimes the cost of staying is your peace, and no growth is worth that. So when you're sitting there asking yourself, can I trust them again? I want you to go deeper. Ask yourself, do I feel good here? Not perfect, not fairy tale, just good, grounded, safe, alive. Because the real measure of love isn't just about whether someone doesn't betray you, it's whether you feel emotionally full when you're around them. Like you don't have to shrink, like you don't have to perform, like you're home. And if the answer is no, if you feel like you're constantly trying to forgive but never feeling free, if you're exhausted from trying to rebuild something they broke without ever asking how you feel, then maybe the question isn't whether they'll cheat again. Maybe the real question is whether you can be truly happy here anymore. Because let's be honest, staying just to avoid being alone or to avoid the pain of ending things will only cost you more in the long run. It delays healing. It delays joy. It keeps you stuck in a version of life that no longer reflects who you are or what you want. And please don't mistake endurance for strength. Sometimes we think that holding on proves how loyal or committed we are, but sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let go. Not because you're giving up, but because you've outgrown the version of yourself that tolerated so little. So take a moment, forget the fear, forget the what ifs. Just listen to that quiet voice inside, the one that knows the truth,